Welcome to your Daily 5 for Tuesday, August 22nd, 2023. There have been a number of high-profile stories in the last, I would say, 3 to 4 weeks that appear to, and I think correctly, I don't know whether the stories are necessarily designed for this or if this is just a natural byproduct of it, but it does appear that there is a cooling or a necessary deflation when it comes to the hype and the news articles and the hysteria around large language models or machine-generated content or whatever you'd like to call it, which is normally misbranded as AI. But as I've linked here, there's at least a couple of stories, one which I saw very recently, that are talking about the fact that, the promised utopia of these models may be a little bit over-exaggerated. And on the other side, the fears over them have been equally, and this is similar to what I talked about with Jason Howell in the most recent Late Night, is the reality is there is going to be a middle ground for this technology. And unfortunately, like so many others, whether it's, things that were always nonsense to begin with, NFTs, crypto to some degree, or things that were overblown and have found some type of use, which I think is where this is going to land, the embrace and the overestimation and of course monetization. Everybody ran. There was actually a thing I saw, which I have no trouble believing is at least partially true, about a 6 or 7 step process to create, sell a but a minimal AI, quote, company. And it makes sense because I've seen job listings, which are ridiculous, for AI specialist or LLM promoter and things like that. And of course, it's like any bubble. And the downside of that is that a technology that is neither anywhere as good or as destructive as it's seen to be is really just losing the ability to naturally evolve and to be, I think, properly evaluated for both what it can do, for its promise, and for the risk associated. And of course, you have people who just think it should be a Wild West and you should use these tools for anything. And of course, there are downsides to that, which we're now starting to see, where people are using these things in malicious ways, which, guess what? Anybody could have predicted that. And on the other side, the overhype of it, the overestimation of it creates, in many ways, mirroring the problems with the stock market, when somebody thinks that these technologies can literally do anything, and then you start to realize that there are very, very harsh barriers to what these things can do, it gets people to then say, oh, well, the bottom's falling out, now it's all garbage. OpenAI, I think, just recently had said that they're in some financial trouble, probably because of the way that they drove revenue and brought in investment, and now, of course, there are limits to what the models can do. And that's where the course correction that's happening is something that's better to be happening now than, say, 5 years from now. Because if you think about VR is another one like this, where every time there is some minor innovation in VR, and Apple's Vision Pro headset will probably be the next one. I'm sure it's going to be wonderful hardware that has some really impressive things, but I don't for a second think it's going to convert society into a VR utopia where everybody has a headset. It's just magical thinking. It's going to be a very niche application for probably a very dedicated audience, and I think that these large language models are going to be the same. Now, they'll be used more often. I don't want to compare VR and LLM as the same thing. There are definitely places where large language models and machine-generated algorithms and analysis of content are going to be hugely beneficial. Medical areas. That's just one that I can think of where there's a huge amount of applications that it won't replace human beings. It's not going to suddenly be no nurses in hospitals, but it will allow nurses to be able to more quickly figure out something that may be going wrong and apply a treatment. If something can compare a handful of symptoms to another database across the country in seconds, and say there is an 85% possibility that this is what's happening, check to see if maybe this is what's going on, that could allow the saving of thousands of lives. Now, again, it's not going to replace a doctor, it's not going to replace a nurse, it doesn't replace the human connection, but it bolsters it, it amplifies it, it makes things better. And so I'm glad that we're starting to see a bit of a recession from AI is going to solve everything and going to take over the world to, okay, there are things this technology does well, and there are things it doesn't do so well. And so let's try to figure out how we can anticipate the negative ways it can be used and apply it properly in ways that bolster human productivity and innovation as opposed to trying to replace it. So in that way, I find these stories coming out to actually be pretty reassuring. Later.